Hi writers, today's topic is academic honesty and specifically how to make sure that you're avoiding plagiarism in your papers in this class and beyond, both unintentional or accidental plagiarism and intentional plagiarism. So first of all, I want to make sure that you know that coming up in coming weeks in the class, there will be a source usage quiz. And some of the information in this presentation and in the textbook reading on this section and the links provided as well will appear on that source usage quiz. So there will be questions about when to cite, when it's appropriate to cite, and some questions asking you to identify plagiarism and potential examples of plagiarism. So this will come back up again. The section from the textbook includes information about how to avoid unintentional plagiarism, common errors that result in plagiarism or are considered plagiarism, and how to avoid those errors, as well as some specific, there's a blue box on internet sources and plagiarism that's important as well. So this presentation supplements but does not cover everything in the textbook. So please make sure that you have read that before you continue in the presentation. So, plagiarism, as defined by the textbook, is the act of using the words or ideas of another person without attributing them to their rightful author. And that is words or ideas, which is really important. So, you're presenting borrowed words or ideas as if they came from you, as if they're your own. And so, it's really a misrepresentation of yourself for your readers. If you do not say where ideas or phrasings came from, your readers assume that it was you, and that is unethical and irresponsible as a writer. I've included a link on Classroom along with this that is Yale's website about plagiarism, and a lot of these links are really helpful if you find that you still need some clarification. Definition of plagiarism, a list of when you should cite that will be referred to here, some explanation of what constitutes common knowledge, which if you have questions about that the textbook can't answer, and then some high-risk situations. And I really like this link because it helps explain some reasons why plagiarism tends to occur. So some of these are students who wait until the last minute, they procrastinated, and they get desperate. And so it's always better to communicate with your instructor when that's happening and ask for an extension instead of resorting to a desperate act of plagiarism. Not taking notes carefully about where things are coming from, as well as leaning too heavily on particular sources. So this is really helpful because it helps you understand how not to put yourself in a situation where plagiarism may seem like your best option, because it is not a good option. Also, from those links, I really like this explanation of why plagiarism is so important to avoid. It's sort of antithetical to the concept of college and what we're doing here. College asks you to write for an academic audience and to join in the academic world as a scholar. And so when you're presented with an assignment, you're being asked and invited to join an ongoing conversation. But if you plagiarize, you're entering that conversation on false grounds. You're representing yourself as someone you're not, and you're losing your voice and your chance to contribute to that conversation with your own ideas. And so it's really a shame, and it says that you don't feel capable of having your own ideas. And so if you find yourself lacking ideas, you should ask your instructor for help rather than resorting to something like plagiarism. There are three general forms of plagiarism. The first is using a source's language without quoting. So that's when you use phrasing or language word for word from a source without putting quotation marks around it and or without saying where that quote came from. Number two is using information from a source without attribution. So that's any information, ideas, theories, conclusions from a source without saying where those ideas or information came from. Even if you put it in your own words, you still need to attribute it to the source. Otherwise, your readers will assume that that's your idea, and that's what makes it unethical. And the third, which we will discuss more when we talk about how to paraphrase effectively, is paraphrasing a source, but not exactly putting it in your own words. So paraphrasing in a way that stays too close to the way it was originally phrased. And again, we'll come back to that here in a few days in class. I really like these flowcharts to help students understand what needs to be cited and when you should cite. So another person's exact words or another person's ideas should be cited, even if it's in your own words. Something that students often get confused about is even if it's information you already knew coming into the paper. So let's say you've loved skunks for a while, you're interested in skunks, you're excited about them, so you know a lot of facts about them. And then you get a paper assignment that's like, make an argument about a policy. So you make this argument paper that skunks need to be more protected in legislation. We need to protect our skunk population. In that paper, you might include some facts about skunks that you already knew, but you didn't come up with those facts yourself. So you learned them from somewhere at some point, from some book you read, from some TV show you watched. And so even if you already knew it coming into the paper, you still need to cite that information. So if you say in the paper, skunk spray is highly flammable, like you didn't do the research to find that out yourself, unless you did, right? But you read that somewhere at some point. And so you still need to include a source for that information. And that sometimes means finding a source to include something, even if you already knew it. That serves two purposes. Number one, it makes sure that your information was correct. What if you learned it from a faulty source? What if you learned it once upon a time and that's out of date now, right? So it helps you verify the information going into your paper so that your paper is based on true, verifiable information. And number two, your readers will want to know where stuff came from. So even if you have to look up a source to verify information you already knew, you still need to include that citation and the source documentation in your paper. So that's a common misunderstanding about source usage as well that sometimes results in unintentional plagiarism. So you must cite when, and again, this is from the Yale link, you must cite when you're quoting word for word, when you're introducing facts that came from a source, when you paraphrase or summarize ideas, interpretations, conclusions, theories that you found in a source, or when you introduce information into your paper that's not common knowledge. Even if you already knew it, you still need to cite any introduced information that's not considered common knowledge. Or there are some other examples when you borrow or build upon other people's works or collaborating with other people. I want to talk briefly too about the potential consequences for plagiarism or academic dishonesty in this class. Less severe things, including unintentional, maybe like there's one quotation that you forgot to include a citation for. So first time, one small incident, you will receive a 0 on the assignment, but I may give you the opportunity to correct the assignment depending on the severity or the frequency of the issue. But you will receive a 0 and I'll say you need to fix it. Otherwise it will stay a 0. You could receive a permanent 0 on the assignment, and again, this will be a case-by-case basis depending on the severity, frequency, or the type of error that's committed. In cases like this, where you receive a permanent 0 on an assignment, there is a report that we are asked to submit to academic affairs. It just registers the incident in your record so that if it continues to occur in other classes, the university will intervene. Okay. More severe forms of plagiarism, so things that appear to be intentional or larger, for example, a whole paragraph comes from a source and is not cited, a paper is bought from somewhere or used from a previous student submitted work, a reused paper in that way, or something that's recurring, so more severe types of plagiarism. A permanent 0 on the assignment, a report to academic affairs, potentially a permanent 0 in the class. It's sort of a 0 tolerance type of concept because you have had this lesson and you know what makes it unethical and why we should avoid it. So again, please make sure you've read through the textbook, and we will practice correct source usage in class to help you avoid some of these unintentional types of plagiarism.